Welcome in to the Tate Mathews podcast. This is our third episode. Appreciate you being with us. Very excited about this episode that we have here. Had the first one with Coach Carlton Flatt, or about Coach Carlton Flatt, and then the Ronnie McMahon, Jeremy Cook story. But very excited about this one. Knew this was one we wanted to do. Got a couple of Hall of Famers in my book in here. We got Coach Phillip Fulmer, Coach Doug Mathews in here. Two guys I've known a long time and always heard the stories about UT football and really from 1980 going on, and love to. I know as a fan and as a listener, I love to hear the stories kind of inside the headset, the coaching office, the locker room, things like that. And Coach Fulmer and Coach Mathews both got here in 1980, and were kind of put in charge of developing and improving and getting the run game that became so famous in the 1980s, and then obviously on to 90s with Coach Fulmer. And I always love to hear those stories. Had a lot of people who like to hear about that, and I thought, let's just get the two guys in a room who did it, and let's talk about it and go down memory lane. So I'm very thankful and excited to do this with you guys.
Good to be here.
Good to see you, Coach.
Excited to be here. This is will be fun for us to renew the old stories and things. It's great. Thank you for doing this.
Yes, sir. Well, and we'll get to that in a second. But you all actually shared an office for 8 years together. So were the desks this close, or
Stories in this, it couldn't be told, but yeah,
that's another podcast.
that's another podcast.
Phil got here in January of 1980, and I came in February. So he had about a 3-4 week head start on me. When we shared an office in Old Stokely until he built the new, what is now the Anderson Athletic Center in '89. I think we moved in for the '89 season.
Both of us young guys to be, that had to not have the experience, that gives you a chance to be at a place like Tennessee. But Coach Dickey or Coach Mathews, gave us an opportunity, and we took advantage of it and grew as we matured. I think we both brought some ideas and thoughts and everything, but there was a way that Coach Mathews wanted it done, and we worked all the time to make sure we were doing it like he wanted, to do it. Doug probably had the harder part of it because I inherited a group of guys. My second year, actually, my first year I had 4 seniors and a junior, but my second year, all those juniors had left, and the senior was hurt, so we had all new players in the offensive line. And Coach Mathews would come in and just chew my rear end out, about whatever it needed to do chewed about. And on the way out the door, he'd get a little piece of Doug too along the way. And that kind of was our relationship for a while until we got, matured and better players and all that sort of thing. But it was an interesting time for us, for sure.
Well, the joke on that part of it wasn't a joke. I mean, I'd be sitting over at my desk, just kind of moving my papers around, trying to, not let you see me sitting up there. I mean, he'd get on Phil a little bit, and he was pretty equal with his when he wanted to talk to somebody. So, but it was almost like, well, while I'm in here, I might as well say same to Matthews too. So this goes on for about 3 or 4 days. And Philip, this was our second year. I had a couple of the outstanding running backs, and he had a brand new group of guys who really each were young, make a lot of mistakes. But I looked over after that about the 3rd or 4th day, and I said, Philip, one of two things got to happen. I said, you got to get that offensive line playing better, or one of us is going to be better. It's all of us.
And we did. We got better as it went along. Those same guys, a lot of them played professionally, and was led to what we, did for a long period of time was, having a good run game because we recruited well and took care of our own positions. I figured out really quickly you can recruit all you want to recruit, but you better make sure you're getting your position taken care of. And I learned that real quick. That was important.
Well, especially, every kid football coach, I worked for 6. Philip was a great football coach for a long time. They all have certain ways they do things. I mean, football is football, but they have a way they do things, the way they explain things, what they expect, and took both of us a little while to figure out exactly what he wanted, but we got around to it pretty quick and
pretty quickly. That's some great years. Coach had a few ways that he said things, and he didn't want the spaghetti-legged offensive lineman, and all those. And he actually had us in a 4-point stance for a little while there, and we at that point were throwing the ball quite a bit. So technical things we did discuss, quite a bit. But he had his ideas of how he wanted to look, and we managed to please him enough so to stay around.
Phillip in particular, but myself also. I spent 10 years with Coach. Phillip's here 12 years. And then our offensive staff that we'll be talking about 83, turned into one of the very best students who, yeah, played greatly. Yeah. But one thing I've always said about Coach Majors, I think Phillip will agree with me on this. He was never a coordinator. He was head football coach when he was 28. That's very, very young at Iowa State. And when he got out of Tennessee, he went to Canada a couple years, so he was only an assistant coach. But what he did was, I think a lot of this, Phillip, came from his dad, who you knew very, very well. He knew just the 4 or 5 basic fundamentals on every position. He didn't know how to teach the offensive line, but he knew about what Phillip just talked about, feet, stance, all those things. I was a running back coach at that time, how to protect the football. And as long as you did those and worked on them, and he knew you worked on them, he stayed pretty quiet. But if you got to wait to know those things, he would come in and let you know you probably need to get back to him pretty quickly.
So it looked like so you're 29 when you got hired?
29.
And you're 32.
I was 31, became 32 that season.
When you were here, so 31.
It's 2 years that felt.
And he hires a 29-year-old and a 31-year-old. I always thought that was, you look at today. You were coming from Wichita, Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt. I've been a year at Vanderbilt, 5 years at Wichita State, and I came back and visited, when I was at Wichita State. Of course, Coach Paddle was here, but I was, staying in touch, with my university. And Coach Majors, when we were young, and he'd come back to Sewanee, and Bobby and I he'd work us out. Bobby was a secondary guy, obviously, and I was a wannabe linebacker, back in the day. And but he would, so I knew him, more on a personal standpoint than a professional standpoint. And I think with Bill Pace, had a lot of connections, obviously from in Nashville and Vanderbilt, and knew who I was, and he was coordinator, and so they took a chance on a 29-year-old to come back and do it well. So
kind of interesting for Tennessee fans. Phillip worked for George McIntyre. The first.
Right.
Of course, there is a George McIntyre at the University of Tennessee right now. We're all excited to see. One thing a coach would do, and I didn't realize this, and he and I talked about it later, he liked to hire players who had played in the Southeastern Conference. Phil played, I played, me, or coach, like a Bill Pace, Frankie Manuel, playing, obviously, at University of Tennessee. But the reason that he hired me, one reason was Coach Pace had coached me at Vanderbilt, but also was working at the time for Bill Dooley at Virginia Tech and the I formation running the game, and that was part of it also. But I think primarily it was because, and he did the same thing when Phillip and I were assistants, especially those last 4 or 5 years when we were assistants. He listened because he had not been a head coach. Had not been an assistant coach for many, many years. And we knew who would work in and fit in with our staff pretty much. And he would listen. He did listen. I don't know that wasn't the reason he made all these decisions, but he did listen on those things.
I think he researched coaches as about as well as anybody I've seen. From West Coast to East Coast, or people that had success and people that knew somebody knew, that kind of thing. And he hired some really good coaches. We were young coaches, and when we ended up with at least three coordinators that came from different parts of the country. And we learned a lot from them, but I think they learned a lot from us to keep Coach Majors out of their office. You just do it this way, So it was a really unique time for me as a growing coach, and I'm sure you as well, Don.
Hey, you mentioned it, Bill. One thing that every coach has their strength, head coach. The kids he hired, you look at who he hired at Tennessee and at Pittsburgh and Nicker and even Iowa State, he hired really good. He had that knack for hiring those guys, and he made changes pretty pretty quickly, pretty rapidly, but he always brought good people, and we're going to be talking about that offensive staff. Phil's talking about five assistant coaches on that. 4 of them became head football coaches. The only one that didn't was me, and I know we're going to get into that today.
Really good one. Well, what I thought was interesting, so Coach Pace coached you. He had recruited you, and you knew him. He was the offense coordinator. So you were in a split back when you first got here. I think what everybody, when they think of the running game in the 80s, think of it in the I formation. So why were we in the split back, and then how did it evolve?
Well, that's really what Phillip and I, Phillip had with the offensive line. He coached 5 guys, I coached 2. But he and the key in the passing game also. But really, when Coach Majors came here, just think back to those Pitt teams, he had Tony Dorsett. They were a split back team and an I back. Well, not many players could do both. I mean, Tony Dorsett's out there. So one of the reasons, and we very early started looking, we ran a little split back those first year or 2, but we eventually went to an all I formation and 1 back set. A lot of it had to do with a young man named Johnny Jones, who was an I back. But I know my area was, I had to know who we were protecting in the pass. Phillip had let me know who my guy was. So we were running. I was running. We were in charge of the running game. I mean, and then we had other coaches who were phenomenal in the passing game. But it was a great mixture. But going to the I formation was when we became really running the ball well, and a lot of it had to do with Johnny Jones. But
Yeah, it was a conscious decision. What can your quarterback do, and what can your running backs do, and we could go in a lot of different ways, and we got away from the option. We got away from the 2 backs, and had a real full back at the time, and that was still the craze, which good teams, best teams did that. And then we recruited linemen to fit into that. Not so much the faster, quicker linemen, but bigger, stronger guys. They could be physical and go from there. And you just see it, the evolution from 80, 81, 82, and we were getting better and better in 83. And then, of course, 85 was the sugar balls, and we're nationally established now as to what Tennessee is. And that was a real accomplishment by the staff together, obviously with Coach Majors leading the way.
Well, and so I was going to ask you that, but I think you just said it. So when you got here, obviously the offensive linemen are who you have, but then you can kind of start putting your fingerprints on it and recruiting towards the kind of players that you wanted. So you did change a little bit the type of offensive linemen and running backs you were recruiting.
Look what we were looking for. We had to in-state areas. Doug and I did most of it.
Yeah.
So that helped a lot, and we recruited linemen from there, and then we able to move them around. Some I was great at the defensive line coach might say, this guy is not going to play on defense here, or something like that. And he's positioned himself to get another recruit or whatever. But I'm saying, hey, I'll take him, and we had a lot of good players that turned out to be really good offensive linemen that might not have played on the defensive side, but they had the mentality, the physical mentality to whip your ass, and dominate and those kind of things. And that led to us really going all the way into my time, at Tennessee.
Well, here's what Phil's and I figured out pretty quickly. Remember, let's go back to the early 80s. Our 2 big games, Tennessee's 2 big games every year were Auburn and Alabama. You played them every year. We only played 6 conference games back then. So what we knew very early, once Pat Dye came into Auburn, of course, when Coach Bryant was at Alabama, the only way you meet those 2 teams is being physical. You don't beat them throwing football. You got to be able to throw the ball. So we really built our offense around, we're going to run the football. And that's kind of the Tennessee way, going all the way back to Neyland. But Phillip and I really, and we were a tough physical football team. We hit almost every day, and we had tough physical guys. And most of those guys that Phillip's talked about, what I thought was really interesting, were from the state of Tennessee. I mean, our offensive linemen were from, the great majority of some really good ones that weren't.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
a great majority of them, and of course, Phillip do.
And our practice schedules reflected what we wanted to look like as a team, and our inside drills, particularly when we went, you know, might have been against scouts some, and we might have get second team guys to come down, and this is other than going to the ground, this is full speed, and there was a mindset that was created over a period of time, a culture, if you will, that we're going to mash it if we can. A lot of those kids did come from Tennessee.
Was all the old guys that played for you all, the older players that played for you all back then, always heard them talk about how you were both great practice coaches, and you talk about that. I was getting that physicalness instilled into the offense. Coach Majors, did he kind of let you all lead the way, like for that, dictate that in practice?
Again, a coach was he knew those. He would come in and he would watch and he would know what the offensive line. But as far as the schemes and things like that, Phil and I used to kind of laugh. He watched a lot of tape, and he'd come in and he talked to a lot of coaches. And Pat Dye, he talked a lot. Pat Dye was a wishbone guy. And Phil, remember, we were sitting there in the I formation. He'd come in and say, "Hey, I just watched a little bit of Auburn. What do you think about putting you little wishbone playing?" And so he would bring that up so many times. And finally, we would say, "Okay, we're going to put that down." So we put it in, but we never ever put it in. But at least he thought we were putting it. And I know we're going to get into this, but about 83, when Walter Harris, Skippy Brown, David Cutcliffe had been a grad assistant by Phillip and myself. From about 83, Phil, till I went on to the defensive side of the ball in 88, 89. I mean, our offense was really, really good. And I mean, it was productive. I know we'll get into the 85 when Ken Donahue came in and our defense kind of, I would call it catching up. No, but the reason was that the five of us were together 6 or 7 years, and we visited, we put different places. We had a really top-notch offense. There wasn't many teams one place back then. Nah.
Walt would have all these passing ideas coming from Pacific and Jets and all the places that he'd been in them, and they
That's why did Illinois.
Yeah, big time. Let's see. Well, we're not going to do that. The coach didn't go like that. We directed him as a coordinator, and he listened. And then he concentrated on the passing game, and obviously, I had to make sure we're doing the protections and those kind of things, trying to keep Doug's guys active. And they all wanted to get out all the time. They wanted to get the ball thrown to them and say, somebody's got to protect that defense man over there. But then we laughed and fought and argued as coaches, and it led to a really, really good environment for the kids. But they knew what to expect from us, and they looked forward to being physical in ball games. And we had one that dominated so much. Harry Galbraith, his number was 76, so we ended up starting a 76 club, because he was going to wear. He tried to get you out of the game. He wanted to play against the second teamer, so he's trying to beat anybody he played against up. So this is the 76 club. Can you get into the 76? It's a big deal.
Big deal.
Another Tennessee high school, Clarksville High School. One thing I just want to mention, at the same time that we were putting the running game in, Coach Majors hired Al Saunders, and then following Al Saunders, Al was here maybe 1 or 2 years, and he went to pros. And then he brought in Walt Harrison. Both those guys, the passing guru of the late 70s and early 80s, with a coach named Mike White, who came out of California. He was at Illinois. Coach Majors hired both Al and Walt.
Back to back, right?
Back to back. They brought in that drop back pass game. We were a play action, sprint out, get out on the corner, drop back passing game on one back set. And when you combine the I formation that we knew so well, Phillip and I didn't have to worry about routes. Now, one of the reasons why he became an outstanding head coach and I never was one, I didn't care about learning the routes. He did. And, of course, we know what happened when he took over.
Well, I wanted to be like Coach Majors, be able to walk in the room and know something about it. No. It was important. It was important to all of us.
But those years were because of who coach hired, and then the fact that we ran the running game, and we'd sit in there and fight. And during a ball game, I mean, I'd signal in plays. Phillip was up in the press box, and Walt was calling plays, and I said, "When are you going to run the football?" You know, and occasionally Walt would run to you. We got to run pretty good there for a while. He looked a pretty good runner.
We fast forward a little bit. I'm sure we'll come back to this too. But when Doug was the coordinator, and we would have our meetings on Friday, and this is how we're going to win the game. You know, and
You're offensive coordinator. He's defense coordinator.
yeah, yeah, and we Alvin Harper still gives me grief about this. He said, "How many first rounders do you know for receivers that had 26 catches in a year?" And he was still first round, and that was Alvin Harper. But it was because we had to run the football to protect the defense because the defense was struggling. You go fast forward to next year, defense has got to do certain things because the offense is struggling. He is cycling up, or had an injury, or whatever it might be, and that made us so much better. That we were able to concentrate on working. How do we win the game? Not who offense played greater defense, or how many catches you got, or runs you got, or what tackles. Doesn't matter. How do we win the game?
Well, it built on what Phillip was saying. Our offensive staff was together a long time. Our defensive staff changed almost not game to game, but certainly year to year. And one of the things that really helped when we had 89, especially when the Cubs made the change in 88, 89, which was an 11-1 year, big year for us. Phillip and I had been together so long on the offensive side that we would talk back and forth. We had individual offices at Fit Point, moved into the new, what's now the Internet Lake Center. But we would talk about, okay, what do we need to do this week? And there were some ball games when Phillip was saying we were really good on offense, cobweb, and we were really good. But it was, hey, man, these guys are playing that. They're pretty darn set. We're going to have to really play, maybe do some things on defense. So we would kind of set our game plans up about, this is a ball game. He may tell me, hey, this is a game we're gonna be okay in this one, and I may say, look, man, these guys we're playing, or Alabama can really move that football. So, but we'd try to get the ball. The game plan was a total game plan, whether an offensive game plan, a defensive game plan. I think, and he and I talk about this often, and it was because of our relationship, and we could talk to each other, and he could tell me I was full of bull or one error, and that's why I think we were so successful in 89.
87 was like that, and then in 88 we had the really tough start of the season that you could go back and say that was one of the best coaching jobs anybody's ever done, to get through that and then to win the last 5 games that led to the 89 team championship, and 90, 91, which were fabulous years. Sometimes you have to, we know this, you have to have challenges that give you opportunities, and we looked at it that way. Yeah, they're really good, but we can do this, and this, and maybe take them out of the game. One of the best thing I've ever seen happen is we went to 3 wide receivers, and they took Cornelius Bennett out of the linebacker position and put him out over a receiver. I said, stay in 3 wides, keep his big ass out there. Oh, he the home champions, that guy. That was in.
Were you in the box?
I was in the box.
So you're sitting with
All the time. A couple years I was on.
Gotcha. Okay.
But that was the 81 year. I know we're getting out of our lanes here.
Y'all go with it, man.
We went to 3 wide. Number one, we
When did you go 3 wides?
in 1981. 81, and it was out of necessity. 82. Well, it was we didn't.
You had some great receivers.
Pardon me?
You had some great receivers.
Well, what we had that was back in San Huntsman.
Yeah.
And it was the track coach. And this gets lost on some people about those great wide receivers we had. They were track guys, But back then, if you played football in Southeastern Conference, you had to be on a football scholarship. So what Stan Huntsman and Coach Majors and even before that, first time on that, would do, we would put them on football scholarship. They'd still run track and swing, and they'd give them an extra scholarship. Well, man, Anthony Hancock, we had Olympic guys. I mean, I just got to ran the Olympics. Sam Grady later on. So somebody was smart enough to say, hey, our tight end, all that good, let's don't play one. So we had those 3 wide receivers. And in that day, boy, it gave teams, because you spread them out. It was kind of what Coach Heupel's doing here now. We didn't spread them out quite like that. So they had to cover that field, and if
There was a gap left. And if we found the gap, and the backs were able to find the gap,
it was a better running game without a tight end than we had. Yeah, when we had a tight end, but those are good years, and we had some great receivers. You could go.
Willie Gall.
As Phillip said, there wasn't enough. We were going to run the ball probably 60% of the time. So maybe so there wasn't enough balls to go around. And one quick story on this. We can cut this out if you want to.
Now I'll go.
Willie Galt, I was signaling plays hand back then. Everybody talks about Will. Willie was he was a smart young man, and could fly. Fastest player. We had a lot of guys that were Olympic guys, but in a football uniform, I don't think anybody was as fast as Willie Galt was in football uniform. Well, what Willie would do, though, we were running the ball so much, and back at that time, we were running plays in. Walt Harris would call the plays, or Al. I would tell him what it is. We'd send a receiver in because we had a bunch of receivers. So Willie, being as smart as he would, if it was a pass play, he'd go in for the receiver that was going to get the ball. If it was a run play, he'd go to the receiver that was away from run play was. So, but those were good times. Well, we had
those were fun times. We still maintain our physicality. We just didn't without a tight end. We were able to. People moved out, we ran the ball. If they came back into 7 inside, we're throwing quick game. Now you got to tackle a great receiver in the open field. So interesting time.
And there were a couple times there, Alan Copperell in particular, we had a running quarterback who could. We went back to running a little bit of option with them on that. I'll never forget it was the 83 Alabama game in Birmingham. Of course, we always play them in Birmingham before they refurbished that Tuscaloosa. That was a game we won 48 to.
A lot of defense on that game,
but we had 8 scores.
Beat them 41-34.
We had 5 scoring drives for 80 yards. I mean, we moved ball. I mean, almost a wheel. I don't know. We've done that all day. Bobby Gomb will probably have one too. Go ahead, hey, I'm sorry.
No, keep going. Well, it's so. I do want to. So 1980, y'all go 5-6. Who are your first 2 games against? That's a pretty good way to start off your.
George, you talk about a year, and that when we come in, we open up our first game. Our first game was the Herschel Walker game. We're up 16-15 to nothing.
Yeah,
and they bring him in there, and really, we lost that game 16-15. And what?
Coming on everyone. I mean, I can't remember what I had for lunch. I remember all his thing, but I coached him.
But everybody talks about Herschel Walker. Well, we got the ball. If we don't fumble his first down play, we're going to kick the field goal. We had Duncan, what was the
Jimmy,
great kicker. We'd have won that ball. And then we play Southern Cal, and the score tied 17-17.
And who did they have?
They averaged Allen and on defense. Ronnie lost.
Jeff Fisher was on that team, right?
Yep.
Coach Fisher, excuse me.
Except the pass, the beat us. They came down.
We kicked the field. We should have kicked the field goal, and they did. Yeah. Like that was a tough start, but you also could look and see, well, we got a chance, to get better, and season didn't turn like you want, but it made you better the next year, 81, 82, 83. Kind of moved it along.
So then 81, Coach Pace is the coordinator again. I think a lot of people would be like, what is that? You went 8-4, went to the Garden State Bowl. Was that an exciting time in y'all's career, or it had to have been cold?
Game after 6 and 5 was our
I think I saw it was December 13th, and it was in New Jersey, right?
Hayes to be in. They
Yeah.
left the doors open so the wind would come through, and then they closing for the other guy. You know, they did that.
Yeah, they did. Interesting though. So the two teams we played at home to open the season, Georgia and Southern Cal, which we barely lost to, the next year, 81, excuse me.
Right.
We go out there. We get beat.
We killed the horse. The horse died from heaven to run around
After a touchdown?
in the Coliseum. I think they beat us 42-7, and Georgia shut us out. And so we started 0-2 that year also, but we came back and played through went down and beat a good Auburn team. Then actually we beat them in Knoxville.
82, Coach Saunders is the coordinator. You all beat Alabama first time, right? That was Coach Major's first time to beat him
when Phil was playing.
in 11 years, right?
Yeah.
And then 83 is when Coach Harris comes in. You guys have been there 3 years now. You all bring in a wide receiver coach who ended up being a pretty good wide receiver coach by the name of Kippy Brown.
Memphis High guy. We used to call him Memphis High.
Memphis High?
Sweetwater. When Kippy got there, we would call him.
Right. But so now you guys have been there a few years and you've got your thing working.
Yeah. Interesting about, I know we're going to talk about this. This was a great
offensive staff. As I mentioned, forehead, but great offensive staff. Kippy he was quarterback in Memphis. He was from Sweetwater. So I asked him one time, I said, how come, weren't you referred to Tennessee? And he said, yeah, I was referred to Tennessee, but I wanted to play quarterback. And I said, well, couldn't you play it here? And he said, not with Connor Talloway there. That's why he went to Memphis.
Yeah. And then Coach Cutcliffe is tight ends coach.
David was a coach at Banks High School and just won a state championship at 26 years old. And it was my recruiting year, and we got to be best friends. And I convinced him to sell his Cadillac that he was driving. He had to sell his boat and come to Tennessee to be a graduate assistant and make nothing, and he obviously took advantage of it. A great addition to what we were doing. He was a sponge for information, had his own ideas about things, and moved up the ladder from the graduate assistant, and that was a tough job, man. All those guys I had, he was trying to chase them to class and chasing them, getting they were born, all those kinds of things, and then he moved up to the tight end position. What was I guess a short time was what it was called at the time, and then he ended up in a full-time position, and obviously the rest is history.
I think David would tell you the best thing that ever happened to him. Phil brought him in. Coach Major back then, you were only allowed by the NCAA to have 2 offensive grad assistants, and they were grad students. I'm not sure he went to class, but they were grad students, and they got paid at that grad student, and 2 on defense. Well, Philip, but Coach Majors, he didn't, most of the guys were former players or maybe high school guys, but he allowed this. He didn't even know we were hiring David, I'm sure. But
he had to sign off on it, I'm sure.
Yeah, and he lets you bring him in. So David came in. But what David did such a wonderful job of, David started out working with Phillip in the offensive line. He coached tight ends for a while. When I moved over to the defense coordinator, running back, he came back, coached the running backs. And then after that, he coached the quarterbacks and Waltlets. So he coached every position except the wide receivers, and with the quarterbacks he was also working with them, and so that's why, and that's when they developed. I mean, our offense was good. The one Phillip had when Davis was his offense coordinator was a lot of it had to do.
And on that was to your point. When I became the coordinator, finally we broke the offensive record 3 years in a row. And then David takes it over, and we continued to do the same thing. So it was a great addition to David was, and Kippy was. Kippy had personality and recruiting, and and great coach. He had it all. Kippy should have been a head football coach. Yeah, he went a pro route though. I got to He did stay in. He also was whichever league that was, the Memphis Mall.
I think it was the XFL, wasn't it?
Yeah, XFL. He was that. Then he applied for a couple of jobs, but he was kind of interesting. Both Walt and Kippy live in Sarasota, Florida now. But he has retired living in Sarasota, but they great coaches and great people. Yeah, great people.
I'd always heard you talk about it. I haven't you, but Coach Harris, even though he was a quarterback guy, a West Coast Mike Waite passing guy, you said it went hand in hand with you all. He was a physical coach, right? Even though he wanted to throw the ball. And
here's why. When Al Saunders was at Illinois and Walt was there, Walt coached the linebackers, so he was a linebacker coach who became a quarterback coach. And I think you talk to Jeff Francis and Randy Sanders and those guys. He coached those quarterbacks like a linebacker. Coach. I mean, he was tough. He wasn't just pat them on the back. He tell them what a great job they were doing, and we were tough back there. But that was big. And Walt was a Phillip was like this too when he was coordinator. I wasn't like this as defense coordinator, and I'm not denigrating, but some people have the knack of calling football games, calling plays in certain situations. They have a knack for it, and others don't. As a coordinator, I pretty much at Phillip now just say, hey, let's line up a play, and if you expect me to make a call that's going to get you out of this, you probably got some calling. But Phillip, Walt, David, excellent play callers. Al Saunders, I don't remember that. Yeah, he was, but his Phillip. But you got to know when. You got to know when to make that call. You got to play in your pocket on offense. You got to know when's the right time to call that play. If you call it the wrong time, and it's a feel for that. Kid Donahue was the best game day play caller.
Because he would take a chance.
He would take a chance.
Yeah.
He had no fear.
Yeah.
He had no fear. He wasn't worried about the head coach. I'm down there asking what the hell he was doing.
he had been there.
He'd been there with the very best.
So 83, this one, that staff you are talking about that's so legendary gets started. It seems this is where it really gets going. Had some big moments the 3 years before that. And then Coach Brown, I think, always heard, he coached the wide receivers tough. Y'all were all in sync, like, different staffs through the years. Have you ever been on one that was like, and then you all ended up working 5-6 years together, but it just seemed like y'all were all had your different deals, but we're one. And it's not always that way, right?
No, well, Phillip would know a lot. He was with that. He head coach for about 16 years, whatever it was. And some of that, again, I give Coach Majors a lot of credit for it. I mean, he, like I said, he knew what was going on. He didn't know. He didn't know.
Well, yeah, one of our goals is to keep his butt out of my drills or my office that in the evening watching stuff, because we wanted to please him. We wanted to. He was our boss and our guy and the head coach. So we were intent on be part of what he's doing, not all that he's doing. So I had the same thing as a head coach. Later, all of us stayed together. All of us did a pretty long time, and it works a lot better when you're not having your staff coming and going and philosophical things, particularly when it gets tough. Because now everybody's an expert. So we all were on that. Trusted each other.
I thought one of the best things we did, we were tremendously prepared, but again, we didn't have to have meetings like the defense did because they were always replacing players. We were all together. We knew position coach. I knew what Phillip liked, what he didn't like. If I needed to get something done, I knew how to talk to him, and the same way on that. And let me tell you what we were all pretty good at it, and I really took a lot of pride in this, and I know Phillip did too. Every practice, I went out. I told myself I was going to be the best coach on that field. And other guys do too. You can't all be the best coach, but when we went up like pass protecting against the linebackers. We're going to be the best out there. Well, I know the linebacker coach and I'll do the same thing. That's how we got good. That's how we got that in recruiting. Yeah, well, recruiting is a big part of it. But yes,
You're right. You're right. Here's a prideful thing about playing and coaching in Tennessee. You're in a war. Nobody's dying or anything, but you're in a war that you expect to win. And
you talk about that, and again, let's go to that 89 season. What Phil just talked about. We only had 9 assists or maybe 8 assists back then. And on that time, as the most Tennessee football coaches that played at Tennessee, you, Randy Sanders, Jim Bates, Majors, and for years we had Catago. So those guys, and Phillip knew what it meant. I learned it. I played against Tennessee, in college, but I learned it from guys. It meant, and John Majors, it meant something to be a Tennessee Vol. It meant something for Phillip Fulmer, Jim Bates. You kind of go.
Chavis was on that stuff.
Chavis, Kevin Steele. We had some absolutely. Yeah. And those guys brought a lot of pride in the fact that I'm back bunch of miles on my.
Yeah, when I hired Coach Chavis, that was one of the reasons, because I knew how much it meant to him. Having been a player under Coach Majors and a really tough time, that we helped pull him out of it, but he was part of that. Makes a difference.
So 83, y'all go 9-3. Johnny Jones. I read this. Is this right? He's the first 1,000-yard rusher, and
we couldn't believe that either.
You think of all the great. Now, I will say this: the game is different. The single wing tailbacks, quarterbacks, were quarterbacks, but they were tailbacks, and Tennessee got 5 of them, by the way, who were in the National Football Hall of Fame, College Football Hall of Fame. Majors was the last one they were, but same thing. We now many of those years you only played 10 games, but 8 of them were gimmies. And it was there. You kind of wonder if I could do a blend of those guys, though. But no, but Johnny was, and Johnny, I tell you, he's from Munford. I think Bob Harrison recruited him. He came in. I coached him all those years, and I bet that he didn't say 10 words to me in 4 years. He just smiled.
Yeah,
and
does the same thing now.
Same.
Glad to see you and hug you.
Smiling.
He's the one guy I get every Father's Day. I get a text from him, and every New Year's I get a text from him.
All right, so that blew my mind. Part of that's probably because now you all are almost all I formation now in 83, right?
Yeah, we went, and when we did, when we were going to throw the ball a lot, we went to one back, but he was a fullback type, and Johnny was there. So real quickly on Johnny, the reason we went somewhat to the I formation, he was the best. There had been a lot of great running backs here. I was fortunate enough to coach 2 or 3 of them. Phillip had another dozen.
Maybe more.
At 2 or 3 every year. But what Johnny got good at, he was the best off tackle runner. When people ask me, I coached both him and Reggie and Chuck Ware. And when they asked me to compare, Reggie was a great sweeper. So we ran a lot of sweep. Johnny was an off tackle runner. Part of the reason quite frankly, he didn't play in the NFL. He didn't have really good hands. So we just took it back and gave it to him, But he could run that off tackle play and
okay, but I got to ask you this because I was going to ask you. So the Alabama game, win 41-34 on the road, y'all called timeout, and the touchdown run that he made it on, he reversed out and you pitched it to him. Right? Do I remember that right?
Alan Cockrell did.
Cockrell pitched it to him.
What happened on 34-34? And they couldn't slow us down, real. I mean, we call a timeout. It's 3rd down and 2 or 3, Phil. We're on I'll tell you exactly where we are. We were on our own 44-yard line because Johnny ended up running 66 yards. Called a timeout, came over there. We're in Birmingham. And remember how loud it was down there. They had a cover, and boy, it was just noisy all the time. And I remember, as I said there, Phil was up in box. We were debating whether to throw a quick game to pick up a 1st and 10. Yeah. or run our trap option, which was a huge play for us. Yeah. Anyway, so we run that play. Johnny makes one of the. I think Phillip would agree with me on this. It maybe changed a little bit over the years. You go back and look at the players, and we used to talk about this to our stat team when we played Alabama. You go back and look at the history of Tennessee, the players that everybody remembers from the 30s and 40s or 50s and 60s and whatever, is because they made play against Alabama.
Well,
And that guy, yeah, they'll sees that the Redberry got bored, you late. But Johnny get that thing.
And next year we beat him. Our guard, 30 yards down the field, knocked his safety down.
yes,
Hustling Mike Furnace.
Mike Furnace. You see it in the play. It's on YouTube. And the wide receiver and
Great receivers flying. I mean, it'd be
Mike Furnace the fastest offensive lineman you ever had?
He's the fastest offensive lineman that's ever played the position. Okay, he's the fast.
Remember, this
Outrun our screen guys.
Yeah.
Our what was it the kid from Nashville that caught all the screens and everything. He'd outrun her.
Well, we find out with the track guy, and he ran step with it. We play against Alabama. That was but anyway, that play the next year we beat Alabama and Needless State, and the next year 84, and we run the same play that but Tony Robinson kept it on a 2-4 play and beat it. So anyway,
and Johnny goes for over 1,200 yards that year. So back-to-back 1,000-yard rushers. We got this thing really rolling. I think this is right. So in 84, that staff is still the same we're talking about. You enter a offensive GA by the name of Gerald Brown, G-Man. We got another Brown.
Yeah.
The staff just keeps getting better and more continuity, right?
A great addition, to our staff and in relationships, particularly with the players. He was great.
But I think now you're talking about that, we're right in the middle of that group for those 5 coaches, 7 years. And I don't know this, but I know when Phillip became a head coach, one of the things he did was he wanted to keep a staff together.
Yeah.
And I think he called that. And at that point, 85, 86, 87, even 88, we didn't have a great year. We could run. We were a good front. We were a good offensive. But
yeah, that's when the guy was sitting on the board. Right. Stayed there for over 6 weeks.
Wouldn't come down till you won, right? Yeah. So get to 85, Johnny's gone. I could still see those offensive linemen's names on the back of your jersey. That I know you love them all, and none are better than the other, but you had to have loved that group.
Yeah, I loved that group, and they were a product of all that crap we went through in 80, 81, they were, recruited in 82, and they got better and better. Now they're a bunch of grown men, playing out there.
Well, Phillip alluded to this a little earlier, but one thing you learned quickly with Coach Majors, we used to call it CYA, which is what Phillip said, you better have good players. I don't care who you recruit up, but you better have good players playing out there. And that was, the 85 year, too. Phil kind of acknowledges, and I'm a big Tennessee football historian, but if you look from 1985 season, Sugar Bowls, through the 98 season, national championship, 14 years, Tennessee won 5 SEC championships in the national championship. Even Neyland didn't have it. I mean, he had a different conference back, too. But, and it was because of the recruiting and the offense, and then the defense finally caught up.
And the staff continuity, all those things. Yeah. It was a big part of it.
So, Ty, UCLA, right? Week 1, I think. 26, maybe?
26, and kind of interesting on that ball. We were up 14 points, and they in the fourth quarter, and they scored twice.
In Knoxville, right?
In Knoxville. Yeah. But that was Donahue's first year on that. Kind of interesting on that game was Chris White, who became an All-American for us, never played a snap. He was a 5th-year senior. Our starting free safety was a young man named Charles Davis. Chris was his backup. Charles gets hurt in the week of practice of playing, and Chris comes out there and intercepts 3 passes in that ball game. And that, of course, the year best defense Tennessee I think can ever have. Bill may disagree on that. He had some good ones there. But Chris White had a All-American year.
Chris, I recruited Chris, and he wanted to be a quarterback in the worst way. And we tried a while, and it wasn't just going to work out. And it was so pleasing to see a guy from Cleveland, Tennessee, go do what he did. Had 10 interceptions in a year, and he just came back to my golf tournament here a couple weeks ago to be that connected still to Tennessee, which is wonderful to see good guys do good things. Chris was a special young man.
Well, and then that was the year the great Tony Robbins. So you had Manny and some others, but Tony Robinson went an unbelievable play. Got hurt. Daryl Dickey comes in. We never thought Daryl would never come play.
Had a tailback who was a track guy.
And Jet Powell comes in. And
he didn't know his name when we started to see it.
He came out. Oh, it was no serious effort season. And those three got. And then Charles Davis, of course, had a huge year. Another guy that came in to be a quarterback.
He was Powell's another world-class speed. He was a track guy, right? Yeah.
Ice Creek High School. Actually, he's a lawyer in Nashville, right?
That whole offensive group was again a product of all that we had all been through for a period of time. It culminated in that football game.
We enjoyed Clay Scale.
Yeah.
At Tim McGee. I mean, phenomenal. We see Harry, Daryl, Jeff Smith, tight end from down from
Yeah, because you were talking about no tight ends, but then y'all kind of came back to it a little bit in the mid and late '80s. He scored the first touchdown in the Sugar Bowl, didn't he?
Yeah.
Great dance. He was high name.
We still ran the 3 wides too.
Yes. How good would that offense have been? What Daryl Dickey does? I think after Tony gets hurt, tied Georgia Tech, right, and then Daryl comes in, and then after the Georgia Tech game, that offense really gets rolling. What he did and his teammates was awesome. But how good was that offense going to be if Tony doesn't get hurt?
Oh, well, that's hard. I mean, great. They were going to be great. Turned out to be really good anyway, But you lose a talent like that at quarterback, it's hard to. Well, it's hard to make. I mean, our defense played so good at.
Yeah, the last 5 games, I think we gave up 4 of them 7 points and 3 or maybe a shutout. But the thing that Daryl was so good at, Daryl was actually a 6-year senior. Quite honestly, he was here primarily one reason because of his dad. Really. You said that, I didn't say. Being the crude. No, he was there. That's what he was. He was the coach's son who knew became a tremendous coach.
Yeah.
And he ran that offense. And thing that Daryl did was he got the ball because he knew how to hit the ball. And we had some guys that could go get the football. But all you got to do if you want to watch, to me, the most scintillating game, you got to use a band book or it.
It was very good.
Scintillating game. That Auburn game that year with Tony Robinson.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. In Knoxville. Yeah, she's on the cover of Sports Illustrated. There's been some that is good a game, but I mean, phenomenal. Yeah.
Was Harry Galbraith, was he a vocal guy or just intense?
Once, he both. If he got mad, he was really vocal, You can ask some of my coaches that are on the sideline with him when he throws a Gatorade on you, whatever. Harry was
somebody overstepped.
Playing off the field, loving, fun. What they call it, Harry Love. Harry Love. Harry called it. Caught him a lot of himself. But in the game, I mean, you felt like you created a monster. Because he was literally dirty. And we had to break him from that because it was costing penalties. But he was going to try to play to hurt you. And end of the game or end of the series or end of the play, he's in your face. He said, I'm coming to get you, And I had a couple like that. Kevin Mays was like that. Kevin would say, hey, I'm getting ready to block you and you can't do anything about it. Or I've dated girls tougher than you. You know, right in the middle of the game, he's talking crap. Harry was like that.
Well, I tell you how good Harry Allen was. Harry was number one. He's about 6 foot tall. Yeah, wasn't very tall. 275, 280 back then. Yeah, drafted and went to Miami, and when became a free agent, he was the highest paid offensive lineman. He went to Green Bay in history of the NFL. Yeah, that does kind of good. Good player.
Train killer.
Killer. So y'all get to everybody knows the rest of the story. You get to Miami, you get to the Sugar Bowl, 35-7. That was just Miami scores first, right? And then it was all orange after that.
Or made the fake something, got down there to score. They didn't move the ball hardly at all. I think we fumbled a punt or something. Something happened. Yeah, I don't remember. But yeah, they
So it was over. It was over, because they couldn't get a pass off, and y'all gave us field position like 2 or 3 times in a row, and then we popped a big one. There was a
jump out that long run on that, but that game was won defensively. I mean, we were supposed to lose that year, but that game was won. We got there.
Yeah, tell them the
Well, Miami was coached by Jimmy Johnson, and that was kind of when they were getting into their whatever the heck they felt they were down there, being meaner and tougher and all that kind of stuff. So we, at that bowl game, we got there a week before the game, and Coach Mathews, all of that, our guys, we didn't have curfew of the last 2 or 3 nights. Yeah, they were in New Orleans, they were enjoying it. It had been a long time getting forward. Tennessee had been in New Orleans. No, we were all enjoying it. But they come back in. I remember Dale Jones, who was tremendous league, not to mention the good of players we've ever had up anywhere. Come back in and said, Coach, you guys are a bunch of jerks. After when they met each other out, they're a bunch of jerks. So when we went out there for that ball game, and again, I don't know how many the Super Bowl or Super Bowl, Superdome, hell, but 80% was not, at least, it was UT fans. Yeah. And they were, Coach Majors, literally, Jimmy Johnson's coach for him, and that I would say, we beat him 35-7, and we got every walk on the football game. Our tailback, our center was our long snacks. Yeah. And he takes a knee on about the 5-yard line, and we'd scored it. Chris White intercepted the pass, run it down to the 5.
Didn't Coach Donahue pick up a tail?
Donahue was brilliant. Yeah. A brilliant defender. He had played for Neyland. He was he on the 51 team? No, sure. He played for Neyland, and he coached 6 national championships with Bear Bryant. And when he came in, Phillip made it. We never talked about this, but when he brought Donahue, and Donahue was revered back in that time in coaching fresh. Never been a head coach. Everybody knew who Ken Donahue was. And when he came to Tennessee, he brought that, what would you call it, Phil? Gravitas or whatever. And he made us better coaches. No, because when we went up against him, I mean, he tried to slit your throat out on the practice field. Yeah, to do anything, against the team. Anything.
It was so okay if it's going to be that way, because I had some good players too. We used to.
Well, he made us better.
Here's on you and one. We had a 3-on-3. Between the dummies, Oklahoma drill kind of thing. 3 lines.
We call it the Vol drill.
Yeah, Vol.
Didn't want Oklahoma to get any credit.
Defensive guys over there, and we were just wearing their butt out. Big, good play. Bruce Wilkerson. I can't remember all of there, but Harry.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we come out and they snapped the ball in an Oklahoma drill. One guy goes over here, another goes behind him. Another one goes behind. He's twisting. In a toughness drill. See, Coach, we're going. I'm like, where are you going? I tell you what, it wasn't the one purpose of the drill, was right. To screw us.
Right.
It was screwing it.
He wanted to win.
You got to kind of picture this, because this is practice now. We're not, in the middle of the week practice.
So we would go against the defense some, and primarily it would be thud. We would be going full speed, but we were both getting good work against good players. And we called playing huddle. But Ken would stand back. He would never stand behind the defense. He'd stand behind the offense and kind of want to see where they're at.
He'd start telling them, "We're made to go run the ball."
And we didn't say it, but that's the way he was, man. Well, what a great coach.
He took me under his wing a little bit, because I asked a lot of questions, about Alabama and Coach Bryant and everything, and he gave me and I cherished these notes that he took, a copy of his notes that he had taken over years, to share with me, as a young coach trying to be better. So
He came to Tennessee. Ray Perkins inspired him. Ray Perkins inspired him. He was on the market, and Coach Major snapped him up. And I don't know, Phil, you may disagree with me on this, but that team probably would have been we played 11 games back then, I think, maybe 7-14. Yeah, talent wise.
Without him,
Without him. You look at all those defensive guys that he had. Only one of them played pro football. They were just really good. Dale Jones and those guys, Ryan Kimrow, and they were just good. They were just good football players.
yeah, a bunch of tough ones. 86. So that was a great way to end the season. 86, 7-5. Defeat Minnesota 21-14 in the Liberty Bowl. Saw the Alabama score that year was 28-56 down. Is that the orange cleats game? When Tennessee wore all orange and orange cleats?
What people have to remember when you say Liberty Bowl, there were only like 8 or 9 bowls.
Right.
I mean, it's just to get to a bowl was a big deal. Now there's 40.
Yeah. And just taking 5 lean teams. Yeah, sure. Minus doesn't it? Sure. Yeah.
So 7-5 after 85 and 86 wasn't good.
But it was still good.
But it was okay. I mean, you could not gonna. Well, now you might get harder, but back then you didn't.
So then 87,
86. Let's go back. So that now we're starting to get into
to running backs that were, Johnny was outstanding, but he wasn't pro back. Reggie Cobb gets there. Keith Davis kind of led but Reggie Cobb gets there. He redshirted in 86. He comes out and you coached a bunch of them, but Reggie was
as good as any I had.
Yeah, he's really be anybody. Great player, great anybody.
Kid had some issues, background, whatever, but what a great person. Left. After his pro career, he worked with the NFL, working with kids.
And he was a scout
in
San Francisco.
Fantastic person and great player. Yeah.
one of my favorite when I think back. But Knoxville Central. 87 is when he really broke out. That's what I was going to ask. Y'all go 10-2-1, defeat Indiana in the Peach Bowl. Remember that Reggie had a big game in the Peach Bowl, but man, set the single season record for touchdowns and all-purpose yards. But as much as you love Johnny, he was a different kind of back, right?
Johnny was a really good player. Reggie was an outstanding player. I think it was the 86 when we played Iowa in the kickoff classic. 86. He's a redshirt freshman. Scores pretty much 5. And we get the ball with like 6 minutes to go, and I don't know if he did anything but run yet. Ran the ball, and we ran the ball down their throat. And Reggie was he was a quality player. Speed. I'll never forget. Kippy was recruiting. He was at the Knox Central, and I was at his junior year. I was his state track meet in Nashville, and he would long jump me. And I knew about him, but we were recruiting him, but dumb, I guess, weren't all that tight ends to get me. I saw him long jump 23 feet 6 inches. And if you know anything about the long jump, you don't jump that far if you ain't fast. And from that point on,
And pretty big too. Even then, yeah.
He's a lot like Jamal Lewis. If you want a more recent player, is a lot like that. Not quite as big, but thick. But
that started to run. I mean, then until today, Tennessee
Never really stopped.
to really, and of course Chuck Webb comes a little bit later. And then, I can't even name all the guys built that. I like the coach cup. Well,
it was easy to run. Run the books. They run the ball.
Run the ball. Hold on to it.
Even with Tate, I mean, again, for the same principles, there's times that you take care of the defense, and cover the end. Sometimes defense takes care of you too.
So 88, everybody knows about that. That's you mentioned that earlier. Start off 0-5.
Yeah, I mean that's just it's a weird, weird games, weird scores. And we're not ourselves for sure.
we weren't very good on offense.
Yeah.
I mean,
Why?
the game, but I don't know the game. But we had the game before Washington State beat us for that 5th loss before Coach made the change, and I think they beat us. We scored like it'd be 15, 20 points. I mean, we were playing real low on offense either for some reason. And then of course, Coach made the change, and after at that Washington State game, we had an open date, and we got to play Alabama. Phillip Fulmer tell this story, but we worked and we had an off day, an open day coming up, so we weren't going to go be in the office on Sunday. And at that ball game that night, I get a call from the head football coach, and then he didn't have cell phones, and saying he wanted to see me in the office that Sunday morning, and so
I could go a lot of ways.
Well, did you know any of this was going to happen?
Yeah, no, I didn't know what you were talking about. So anyway, I get off phone, and your mother asked me. She said, "That could make." I said, "Yeah." And I said, "What do you want?" And I said, "He wants to see me tomorrow morning." And she said, "Do you think he's going to fire you?" And I said, "I hope he fires." And of course, that led to something. Those were tough times. But yeah,
you did a great job pulling it all back together. I mean, it really, Coach Mathews did. You did. The whole staff changed, made a difference. And our schedule, your energy level for the defense was great.
But that was kind of what started what Phil and I were talking about. We were still office mates at that time, and started to work more together with each other. But again, I give there's everybody has an opinion of Coach Majors. Everybody has an opinion of Phillip Fulmer because they were 32 straight years. Those two guys were head coaches. Think about that. 32 straight years. We had two guys who were played in Tennessee.
Both from Franklin County.
Both.
That's crazy.
And but he would make cut decisions. And Phil said, "You got to do that."
Yeah. That's a tough decision right there.
Let Ken go.
That got to got to be personal. I mean, between Coach and Ken, but way beyond. I mean, because they went way back. As friends and counterparts and competitors, and now they're working together. And I think Ken just wasn't gonna listen.
No. Yeah. Well, you think about it. We just talked about earlier. He got to Tennessee because Ray Burton inspired him, and then Coach Majors. He probably can't coach on. He would have got a job the next year or something. Mm-hmm. But he'd go lower, set in his ways, and his first year he gets there, and he could run for mayor. Probably could run for governor in state Tennessee. But then it kind of got to where he and Coach Majors, but they really didn't. Coach Majors respected him so much, and he respected Coach Majors because of their backgrounds. But it got to where it was not a good situation. And I'll give Ken the credit for this. So Coach Majors calls me in that Sunday, tells him he's going to move over, but he's going to keep Ken. He said, "I'm going to keep Ken, but I want you to handle the defense." And I said, well, Coach, I'll be where you're on, but I don't know how that's going to work, you know. And, well, Ken came into my office that Sunday and said, hey, I just want you to know I'm not going to stay. Of course, I really felt it. I love it.
Yeah, I did too.
I love it. But you do what you do what you do. A little bit later, that table can turn real quick.
So y'all play Alabama, lose 28-20, win the next 5.
But we played really well against
Played well.
Played really well. Keith Long in that game, I'll never forget that, a huge, huge ball game. If Keith would have been on one of the better, this may be a little bit off topic, but Phil and I have talked about this before, especially in those early ages, we had some players who, if they would have been on good football teams, would have been great players. Yeah. Right? But we didn't have enough of them. And that 88 team start, I mean, Keith belonged with they went and he had a great career.
If you just figured out, kind of turn back the clock, a lot of that is because of the changes that always happen on defense. The continuity of the staff caused the problems. You know, some of the problems, not all the problems. You know, and we overcame it sometimes. Sometimes we do it.
Coach made you change on defense. He made change on offense. As a matter of fact, it was kind of amazing sometimes. We would not play. Maybe we'd only score 10 points on offense. I felt the other end of it when I became defense coordinator. He rarely got, I mean, he was mad at the defense for giving up 10 points, and we only scored. Now that's the 4 and score 7, right? I mean, but he was a defensive guy too. But anyway, ended with Donahue he was great and just a great man and great coach. And I don't think we have that 85 championship, which kind of kickstarted those next 20 years. Without you may change.
So you get to 89. Now you're defense coordinator, you're offense coordinator. Hoffer came in and replaced, was the quarterback's coach. Would that be right? Jim Hoffer becomes Coach Cutcliffe.
Screw anything up.
Right. Well, I was going to ask. Yeah.
Jim had lots of ideas and things, but we were rolling pretty good, and it could have done it quicker with David Cutcliffe. That would have helped things.
Right.
But Jim was a great coach. Fit right in. Didn't make waves. Coached them hard.
So no, seriously, so he comes in, he's a quarterback coach. How does that conversation go? I mean, the parts that you can say, like, glad you're here, but listen, this is what we do.
Is really understood. We interviewed some people and they wanted to do their own thing and stuff like that. We had a good thing going and we weren't going to stir it up. Well, Jim fit right in and still a great friend,
Who used to say that?
Who?
We got a good thing going. We're not going to let them. Pat Riley.
Pat Riley.
Yeah.
Say our head football coach uses. That's a little deep there.
So, man, we're loaded now. Loaded, especially on offense.
What year is it?
89. You got 2 pretty good running backs. You got 2 great ones. Tony Thompson's on that team, right? I think the running game as a UT running game fan, I think the thing people forget about are the 2 fullbacks, Roland Poles and Greg Amsler. I mean, my goodness, man, we haven't even got to the wide receivers and offensive linemen yet. But
I'll tell you how good that running back core was. Tony Thompson, who the next year is the starter, because the other 2 have led the accomplishers rushing.
yeah.
And he didn't even get ball game for that and that day. And boy, I know with it. Cobweb, I don't know who came up with that name, but he was great. I was on defense as a 5. And, when the offense is on the field and you're on defense, normally you're tough for your defense. I'd watching those 2 guys run. But I'm going to tell you, they were perfect. They were perfect combination. Yeah. And if either one of those guys would have been the tailback, I believe they'd have been a 2,000-yard rusher.
No, I agree. I really do. They were good. Yeah. And they were in a good system to help them do that.
Yeah.
Well, and they had lots of people around them. You mentioned rolling poles. I mean, rolling, and Amsler had to make himself be a blocker because he was a tailback too. Really, one out of New Jersey, one is right, and those guys they looked up linebackers. Particularly Roland. He seeked out cuff guy. And by the second, third quarter, you're not really interested in that much more. As a linebacker, you're wondering where the hell is that big guy coming at me from.
Yeah.
We went I'm pretty sure this is right. We went 7 games in a row that the first play of the game was 7 slang. And everybody knew it. I'll tackle that. Okay, this is what we're going to do. What are you going to do? And it ended up the tailback against the safety because we kicked everybody else's butt up front, and they knew they were, and then they make a cut and 7 yards or 8 yards, 30 yards,
Great. Another thing I always loved about it was obviously Antone Davis and Charles McCray, both first rounders, right?
7th and 8th pick, yeah.
But Myslinski, man, that guy was pretty.
I just talked to Mize the other day. He's still crazy.
Was anybody as intense as him?
Oh, he's wild and intense and loved to play. And New Jersey, he wanted to argue with you, because he thinks he's right. His dad was coach. His dad was a great coach, great high school coach, and he had a chance to go a lot of places, and we just absolutely hit it off. I loved coaching. Mine's that whole group were really, really special guys. You don't have 2 guys, the first round tackles. The
One thing,
great.
Well, and Phillip, one thing that Phillip was an outstanding recruiter. And especially I know you were, but Phillip was really good at recruiting. Covered his, CY. I mean, we had some players up front there. Yeah, guys that some of them were big enough or maybe quite good enough to be in the NFL. Well, boy, they can play in this league.
And fundamentally, you get a guy that's technique wise sound. Is it any position, and then he's got the heart too, and some of that's learned, over time. This is what we expect you to be like, and it perpetuated itself.
Well, and the only way it happened there, and it continued when Phil became a football coach. After a while, you get the you get the reputation of being good in the offensive line. So now you start attracting players, like Con Myslinski. But so many of those guys you had were Bruin and Jeff Smith. They were Knoxville, yeah. And there were a lot of Bruce Wilkerson was in state. And there's great football, great one. He said one of the best you ever felt was, that'd be all time. But that they wanted to come here, just like those wide receivers wanted to come here. It wasn't real difficult coaching wide receivers. Skip Brown had the easiest job in the world. Just go down and say, hey, I'd like to have you come on. They can tell you when, But the offensive line was like that also.
It's awesome. Then you leave and you end up becoming the head coach. But man, that running game, the running backs that you had and all those great rushing performances, and
goes back to what we learned as young guys and doing those inside drills and against each other, 9 on 8, learning how to practice, and thud is a real deal. It's not half speed. We just worked to stay on the beat and not hurt anybody, and it made a huge difference when we had the thing going.
Phil Burgess used to discuss this a lot. We had a lot of time here lately and even talked more about it. But one thing, if you go back and look, when players get hurt, players normally don't get hurt going full speed, right? I mean, they get hurt when they're letting off, or but when you're going physical, now sometimes you get twisted or something, which was another thing Coach Major did a good job of. We didn't we didn't twist players down to practice. It happened in the game, but man, he was really big on this, and I learned a lot from this. That you get hurt brain or a receiver when you twist, so we didn't allow that in practice. If you lock up on him or you're tackling whatever, but don't twist. And I think we kept some guys healthy. We lost some we were a physical practice team. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't any of these take your pads off and come out there,
What was our guy downfield? Is it always cut off of Harry? I can't remember.
You talk about the rabbit. I don't know. Yeah, you'd have cut off. Yeah.
Yeah, we all the backs had to go Harry. Gosh, I should remember, but they'd have to make a move on Harry.
I think we had that probably.
Yeah, I'll think of it. But got this senior moment here.
Anyway, good years.
I would say y'all recalled a lot of those.
You talk about games, and then Phil, of course, when you win the national championship, that's kind of the pinnacle. But
And we were right there to win 2 to 3 more too. Honestly, that was their national.
it started that in '85.
Yeah,
Started that run.
Yeah.
And of course, that it was built up over a couple of years before that. That '85 in Europe. I mean, back there's been some years where you have some years that aren't all that good. We had kind of unfortunately for Coach Heibuck out here, and maybe
and lost our way. I think we found our way better, but we lost our way there a little bit.
I'd say it's back. Well, unfortunately, we're running up against time. I'd love to have an outtakes session sometime. You could tell when Johnny Jones got hit, when he wasn't supposed to get hit, things like that. You were talking about in practice. But anyways, this was great. Coach Fulmer,
Thank you.
appreciate you doing this. You look great. Coach Mathews, thank you for doing this. But yeah, I think it's even on AI now, Chat GPT. It says that you two developed the intense and physical running game that Tennessee football is known for. So one of you two, I don't know who typed that in there, but it's on Chat GPT or AI. So it must be true. And then we just talked about it for
Well, Phillip and I were we were different personalities. That may be fair to say. I don't know that he ever used a profanity, and I would use way too many of them. That would be one part. But it was a good, it's just like a team. And what we were trying to talk to, I think about that, what we started the show with, that all comes that we all had our different personalities. I mean, I approached practice so way different than Walt did. And Walt was kind of the keep calm and and okay, I hear you, but I don't want to hear what I mean.
And you should tell them about Kurt Singer.
I was going to talk about it.
Do we have a run?
We might have to pause. Travis is bringing up more card and battery.
No, let's do this. Let's end it, and then let's have an outtakes.
Okay, good. Yeah.
You good with that?
Yeah.
Hey, seriously. And the other cool thing, too, is y'all's friendship. There's a lot of those in this performance. I mean, in this profession, but a lot of times there's not.
Yeah.
And that's
It all started that first week when he was getting his rear end chewed out, and that's when we became friends.
there you go.
It was mutual. It was mutual. It's survival.
Yeah, or survive.
Hey, they also have 5 opportunities every day to get my rear end spirited. With those 5 lines, he only had 1 or 2.
That's always fun. You were young. Thank you for doing this.
You bet.
I love you, my man. Love you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hope you've enjoyed this, and we will see you again soon.